Good morning, 8th graders. This is Miss Trango, and we are now in section 3.2, parallel lines and transversals. So please, as you're starting, put the date, put the title, what I'm circling in red, in the top right corner of your notes, 3.2, parallel lines and transversals. So the date, whatever that is today, I think it's October 27th, but I make these videos a bit ahead of time, so I'm not always sure. All right, then you're going to set up your lines for your Cornell notes. You're going to write EQ or essential question, and you're going to copy the question. How are the angles formed by parallel lines and a transversal related? Then we are on learning target 3C. I can find the value of missing angles in a pair of parallel lines cut by a transversal with and without algebra. So pause the video so that you can get the essential question and learning target down. Go ahead and pause the video. Take the time you need. All right, then we've got some vocabulary words. So we have a question here. What angles are created when a parallel line cuts a transversal? What angles are created? So basically there are two types of angles. Congruent angles, which just to remind you, congruent means equal. All right, and there are supplementary, and also to remind you, supplementary means they add up to 180. All right, now this picture with line L and line M, those are your parallel lines. So add a little parallel marking. And line N is your transversal. And there are 8 angles formed, 8 angles. And they're always going to follow a pattern kind of like this. Let me zoom in. So I do want you to draw the diagram and write in these numbers. So I'm going to make angle 1, whoops, I'm on highlighter. I'm going to make angle 1 60 degrees. Okay, angle 4 is also going to be 60 degrees because they are vertical angles, like we learned about in chapter 1. Angle 2 will be 120 because it's a linear pair with angle 1 and angle 4. Angle 3 will also be 120. So we talked about that in chapter 1, and basically with a transversal and parallel lines, you get the same exact thing down below. So angle 5 is also 60. Angle 8 is also 60. Angle 6 is 120. Now I'm just using 60 and 120 as an example. It could be 130 and 50. It could be 180. Okay, it could be 110 and 70. So you're always going to get 2 different sizes of angles that are following this same pattern. Then I'm going to go ahead and write in which types of angles are congruent. Which type of angles are congruent? Corresponding. Remember those angles that we talked about yesterday? Angles in the same position. So that would be like angle 1, which is in the top left, and angle 5. And if you notice, they're both 60. Okay, and that would also be like angle 2, top right, and angle 6, top right. Also congruent, 120, 120. Okay. Next, vertical angles. And vertical angles are like 1 and 4, 2 and 3. Those are your vertical angles. All right. What else is congruent? Any of the alternating. So alternate, I'm going to abbreviate that, alternate exterior angles, which would be, maybe I can highlight it in yellow here, which would be angle 1 and angle 8. Those are alternate exterior. They're exterior. They're outside your parallel lines. They're alternating sides of your transversal. And those are both 60. Okay, your other pair of alternate exterior would be 2 and 7. And those are also both 120. Lastly, the alternate interior angles are also congruent. And just to remind you that we talked about yesterday, that would be angle 3 and angle 6, which are 120 and 120. Okay. And angle 4 and angle 5. So those are all your congruent angles, basically corresponding and the alternating ones. All right, which ones are supplementary? The consecutive ones. So consecutive interior and consecutive exterior. All right, and just to show you, so consecutive interior would be 3 and 5, and those are supplementary, 120 and 60. And 4 and 6 would also be consecutive interior inside your parallel lines. Consecutive exterior would be like 1, which is 60, and 7, which is 120. 2 and 8. Okay, so this is a pretty dense slide. There's a lot of information. So pause the video if you need to re-listen to it, or pause it to write anything down. Everything that I've written down should be written down as well. All right, let's move on to the examples. If your hand's getting tired, you can put EX, and you're going to highlight it so I can find the example section. Question 1, find the measure of all angles. Make sure you draw your diagram as well. Okay. Oh, and they even use the same thing as I did. So all we are doing here is finding all the angles. So you can start wherever you want. I might start with angle 4. Angle 4 is vertical to 120, vertical, so I can look back at my notes. Vertical is congruent. I can see right here that the 120 and the 2, that's a linear pair, so they should be supplementary, adding up to 180. 180 minus 120, I get 60. So angle 2 is 60. Angle 3 is also 60 because they are vertical. So I'm always getting those two sizes. All right, angle 5 is corresponding with 120. Corresponding should be congruent. So this is also 120, and then again, I'm just following that same pattern. Okay. So that is the measures, 120, 60, 120, 60, and it's always going to follow that pattern. It might not always be 120 and 60. It could be 130 and 50, 170 and 10. All right, example 2. So now we're adding in a little bit of algebra. Find the value of x and all the angles. So let's start with kind of what we know here. So I have 115. The angle right here, next that I put a red dot, that is supplementary. That is a linear pair. They're on line A together. So I'm going to subtract from 180 to get that angle. So I'm going to do 180 minus 115, and you can use a calculator, that's fine. You can also do it by hand. So I'm going to get 65 degrees. Okay. Angle 4, how big should angle 4 be? See if you can get that. 115. Okay, I'm going to keep moving around. 65. All right. Then let's talk about this algebraic one right here, the x plus 5. So should that be 65 or 115? That should be 65 because it's corresponding. It's in the same position as this 65. Okay, and I'm going to fill in the rest. This is 115, 65, 115. So I found all the angles, 115 and 65. The question also asked me to solve for x. So what do I know? I know that x plus 5 equals 65. So I just solve for x. It's an equation. I see addition. I do the opposite. I subtract from each side of my equation to keep it balanced. X is 60. Okay. All right. Example 3. Find x and all the angles. So same thing. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 180 minus 136 just to figure out the other sides of the angle. And I get 44. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling in all the angles. So remember, I'm always getting this alternating pattern. 136 and 44, I'm always getting this type of pattern. When I come down here, This is also 136 because it's corresponding, top right, 44, 136, 44. So I can see from what I've written here that 7x plus 9 should equal 44. 7x plus 9 should equal 44, so I'm going to solve this. This is a two-step equation. First, I move my constant, the 9. It's a positive 9. I do the opposite. I subtract 9. So I'm doing 44 minus 9. I get 35. You can use a calculator. I divide by 7 to get my x. X is 5. If I wanted to check my answer, I could put it back in. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 9 is 44. So I have found my angles, I have found x. So hopefully you're starting to kind of get a sense of how the angles fit together, how they're related, and we'll keep working on this. The parallel lines were horizontal, like this. So it's a